Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Thursday Night Hockey Show. Thanks to people joining us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, wherever you're joining us from. To you folks out in TikTok land, thank you for joining us on the Thursday Night Hockey Show. We've got a busy night tonight in the NHL. I believe 10 games are part of our nightly slate. In fact, my Sabres are just getting just about to get underway against the Montreal Canadiens, but we'll take a look at the nightly schedule. Tonight we've got the Red Wings facing the Bruins in Boston. Some big news for that we'll get into in a little bit. The Panthers are in Philadelphia to take on the surprising Philadelphia Flyers. The Wild and Senators will face off in Ottawa, and then Buffalo and Montreal round out the early slate of games. At 8 o'clock, we've got the Blues and the Predators playing in Nashville. Oilers taking on the surprising Chicago Blackhawks at 8:30. At 8:30 as well, the Washington Capitals are in Dallas to take on the Stars. And let's see, the Kraken are hosting the Canucks at 10 p.m. Uh, both teams are surprising to me in the way that they've started the season. The Maple Leafs are out west facing the Sharks, and the Kings are hosting the Jets. Those are 10:30 starts out west on the in California. So that's a busy slate of games tonight. Again, the first four games tonight will be starting. We'll keep tabs on those during the broadcast. But we've got an interesting night of hockey ahead of us. So I wanted to get kind of dive right into it about the best teams of the week, worst teams of the weeks, our players of the week in each of the divisions. So let's jump ahead and pop off this screen here, and we're gonna take a look at the NHL standings. Unfortunately, for folks of you on TikTok, you won't be able to see the standings. This is on my live stream on my from Restream. So if you want to see that, head over to my YouTube channel. That link is in the bio for my YouTube stream. But yeah, so interesting week. This last week, we've had some teams that started out a little slow, pick up some steam. Some teams that started out real fast have fallen off. So in the Metro Division, we see that Carolina is leading the division on record. They're tied on points with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Both teams are very surprising. But I think the surprising thing in this entire division is kind of the mediocrity that's settled into the entire division. Um, Most of the teams are hovering around that 500 mark. Carolina's head of the class at 4-1-1, and Pittsburgh 4-2-1. They played one more game, but you know, even it's not been roses for either of those teams as well, because Carolina and Pittsburgh right now are on the Western Canadian hockey swing, and have dropped a couple of games. The Carolina have dropped to Edmonton and Calgary. Same with Pittsburgh. They did right the ship a little bit with or Carolina's righted the ship a little bit with the visiting the Vancouver Canucks and getting a win there. So this week, my hot team in the division is Carolina still. It's nothing spectacular though in this division. Um, I think they're all still trying to feel each other out, and because teams are at 500 doesn't mean that they're bad necessarily. It may be that this is just a division that is so ultra competitive that they're going to be able to compete with one another to and keep the records down. But yeah, Carolina leading the division. I got them as my hot team. Now my cold team again, because this division is so close. I'm kind of going off of current runs right now, and right now the Rangers, who I actually picked to win the Stanley Cup in the first episode of the season, they're on a little bit of a tough run. They've lost 4 in a row, a couple of those in overtime to get the loser point, but they're 500 on the season. Again, this is a team I picked to win the Stanley Cup. I still think that they're very talented. It's way too early to panic in any situation, even though there's some that are a little more dire than others. Rangers really aren't that bad. They're 1 point behind Carolina at this point. Although they played 2 games more in the season than Carolina has, but um, it's just they've hit a little bit of a rough patch, and let's see how they get out of it. Um, my player of the week in the Atlanta in the Metro Division is Jesper Bratt of the Devils. Jesper has, in fact, I can be sharing some stuff here. Jesper Bratt is second in the league, I believe. I'm sorry, no, he's tied for the lead now in points with 12, and has points in all 7 games for the New Jersey Devils. Has played really well for the Devils so far this season. I should be sharing some information here on the screen, but yeah, player of the week, 12 points, tied for the league in the NHL. I think most for assists. I think he's like 3.9 on his points breakdown, 3 goals, 9 assists. But still, multi-point games, including his last outing against Detroit, where he nailed a 3-point night, goal and 2 assists. So Jesper Bratt, hot player of the week in the Metro Division. Let's move on to the Atlantic Division. Um, had they wrapped up that 4-game Western road swing in Western Canada and the Pacific Northwest, undefeated, I would have put the Buffalo Sabres here. Um, they had those first 3 games against three, well, 2 really good teams and one, and then playing Seattle. The Seattle game was a little bit of a disappointment, so I'm not giving the team of the week to the Buffalo Sabres, even though they played really well in those previous 3 games. You got to give it to the Boston Bruins. There's 3-0 this week. They're 3-1 the week before. They're just trucking right now, and they're going to get even better with the return of Brad Marchand. So um, I'm surprised again. I think Boston might be a little thin if they do experience some more injuries, it's particularly on the back end. Um, but they've gotten out to a great start. Can't deny that, even though I hate Boston. Um, my cold team this week in the Atlantic Division, I'm gonna have to go with the Toronto Maple Leafs. You could make an argument either way for Toronto or Tampa here. I'm not gonna put Montreal there because we kind of expected Montreal to be a little slow out of the gate. And they are technically last in the division, but Toronto and Tampa, you expected more out of. And the reason why I'm going with Toronto here is that they've had more of their they've had more exposure to home games. They've played 4 home games this season, um, and they're right around 500 in the division, and um, they just look like they're not really engaged in the season yet. So they've had a couple of really tough losses. One against Montreal, first night of the season, then they had another tough loss against Arizona, where they made Arizona look like a playoff team. So um, yeah, I'm going to go with Toronto this week as my cold team in the Atlantic Division. Again, it's not too we're not going to slam the panic button and like some Toronto fans were doing after that first loss to Montreal, but um, yeah, the Leafs need to get more engaged. Player of the week, I've got to give it to Rasmus Dahlin. Leading the NHL defenseman in points scored. Oh, there's already a pile up in the Montreal crease in the Buffalo game. That's awesome. Um, but Rasmus Dahlin, leading NHL defenseman, he set a record for start of the season goal streak. So he scored in 5 straight games. Previous record was 3, which to me honestly was kind of a low number. Thinking of kind of the different eras of NHL hockey where you're getting more scoring from pretty much everyone to the types of defensemen that we've had over the years, whether it's Orr or Phil Housley or somebody like that, and um, you know that it was only 3 games to set tie the record and then set it against Calgary and then extended it against Vancouver. Uh, He's got 9 points in the 6 games that the Sabres have played. Now he's into his 7th. Um, yeah, Rasmus Dahlin and the NHL agreed with me on that one. But yeah, great week for Rasmus Dahlin. Hopefully he keeps it up. He's turning into that first pick of the draft that Buffalo envisioned when they picked him a few years back. And he's still just 22. I mean, he's He's still got acne. I mean, like, bless the child. He's a youngin. So, oh, well, it looks like Buffalo got a penalty on that crease collision. So, let's see. Let's go to the Central Division and talk our player of the week in the Central, or team of the week in the Central, and that is the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, this is something I don't think I would have ever said about the Chicago Black, or thought would ever thought I would say about the Chicago Blackhawks, either the first week of or first 2 weeks of the season, much less this entire season, or much less like the next 2 seasons. I thought Chicago was just off for a wandering in the wilderness, and would probably end up on the cold teams of the week for quite a few times. But 4 wins in a row for the Chicago Blackhawks, that's amazing. Um, and I went and looked at the stats, and it wasn't that, they were getting, like Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews were carrying the team. Patrick Kane only has 1 goal. Um, Jonathan Toews has 3 goals, but nobody's like a really point a game pace for the team yet. So it's just kind of a team effort. They've gotten some good goaltending out of who's their goaltender? Alex Stalock. They brought him in. They also have Peter Mrazek. Stalock's played gotten most of the starts, and has played really well for the Blackhawks. So how long they can keep this going, I don't know. And I'm sure that if the general manager of the Chicago Blackhawks were thinking that, this is the year we're just going to tank for Connor Bedard, may not. Who knows? This is one of the damnedest things I've ever seen, because Chicago gutted their team of all their young talent, and now they're still playing relatively well. Can't complain. So, our cold team. So since winning both of their games over in Europe, in Czechia, the Nashville Predators have yet to win on the North American continent. They have lost 5 straight, and it doesn't get much easier. I think they've got St. Louis tonight or tomorrow, and yeah, their schedule just doesn't get much easier. So they're gonna have to figure it out. And one of the main culprits behind that is for a guy who was pushing 100 points last season in Roman Josi, which is not a very it's a very rare feat for a defenseman to get that high in scoring. 23 goals, 70 some odd assists for 96 points, 73 assists for 96 points. Wow, Buffalo's just taking penalty after penalty. It's second player in the box now. But he only has 1 point this season. He's like a -7. And since he's been back in the United States, it's like a -8. So he's got to pick his game up if Nashville has any hope of really uh, they had them scoring that many points last season, and they barely snuck into the playoffs. They were the 8th seed and got dispatched fairly quickly by Colorado. So, if they have any hope this season, they need Roman Josi to turn it around, and turn it around quickly, because I just don't think they got enough else on that roster that can carry them into the playoffs. So, uh, our So yeah, their coldest team. Our player of the week in the Central Division is going to be Shane Bear, the Ghost Bear out of Arizona. I didn't think I'd have a Arizona player on my player of the week, but the Ghost Bear is second amongst NHL defensemen with 8 points, 4 goals, 4 assists early in the season. Uh, and if you got him in your fantasy hockey league, he's killing it for you. He's got 5 points on the power play, a goal on the shorthanded. So he's a special team specialist for you, and he's helping you win your fantasy hockey league. So kudos to Shane Bear for having a tremendous start to the NHL season, and doing well for the Arizona Coyotes. And we'll get to them in a minute when we get to our news. And finally, to the Pacific Division. Let me get my there we go. Our team of the Pacific Division this week is Vegas. You can't fault what they've done so far. They're 6-2. They're getting very balanced scoring. I think 8 of their players are scoring at least a half a point a game pace. In fact, several of their players are close to a point a game play pace, including Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, um, uh, uh, the Shea Theodore, including Logan, or I'm sorry, Stevenson. He's really just piled up the points this season and is building off a great season that he had in 2022, 21-22 season. He had a really great season. Chandler Stevenson, that's who it is. He's at a point a game pace for the Vegas Golden Knights, and they're 6-2, and they're also getting decent goaltending. And it wasn't Thompson. Thompson's done okay, um, but Aiden Hill, who formerly of the Coyotes, formerly of the Sharks, comes over in the offseason to shore up the goaltending to play back up, and he's taken the crease, and he's 3-0 this season. A little over two. I'm sorry, 2 goals per game, um, goals against average. So fantastic start to the season for Vegas. Again, for Vegas, because they're so far up against the cap, any injuries that, especially those top guys, it could go sideways very quickly. But they've got the horses to get into the playoffs. They got some horses to make some noise in the Pacific Division. Again, the Pacific Division's looking a little weak this year. They're, in fact, we can get show the standings here. So, Vegas is off to, the best point record in the NHL, with tied with Boston at 12 points. Um, but Calgary's doing okay, but everything else is kind of middling. San Jose's already got 9 games in the bag, but they've lost 7 of them. They're not doing that well. The Anaheim Ducks are not doing that well. LA is 500 on the season. Thought that they may take another step. It's still early. Seattle stacked some points. They're 500 in their points percentage, but 8 points overall, I think is pretty good for them at this point in the season. They look good against my Sabres. I mean, they kind of, oop, I'm about to sneeze here. There we go. They looked really good against the Sabres. They played the Sabres kind of game, used it against the Sabres, and got up to a 5-1 victory in that game. So. Um, I don't know. We'll see what comes out of Seattle. They're kind of a mystery team at this point. Um, our cold team in the division, Pacific Division. I'm going to go with Vancouver. Vancouver. What is going on there? 0-5-2. They I watched their home opener against Buffalo, and they did not look good. They looked like a team that was very fragile mentally, like they were waiting for something bad to happen. They were getting booed by their fans, and Vancouver's a very tough market to begin with. And I'm not surprised that Vancouver had, that they're having the issues. They lost. We'll get into Quinn Hughes. He didn't play the Buffalo game. He looks like he's out for a little bit. Um, and that really is kind of their defense. So they got Tyler Myers back there, big, tall, lanky, former Saber. Um, but not a whole lot on the back end, and I think that's been kind of their Achilles heel this year, is that they don't trust their defense, which causes all kinds of issues all up and down the lineup. And so, yeah, Vancouver's off to a bad start. And hey, my player of the week in the Pacific Division, I got to give this to Phil Kessel. Congratulations. He set a record for being the NHL Ironman, 994 games, I believe he's at now. So, sometime in the next couple weeks, he's going to break the NHL record, or he's already broken the NHL record. He's going to break 1,000 games consecutively played, which is amazing. Can't wait to see that. As maligned as Phil Kessel has been over his career, I think a lot of it is not deserved because he's a pure natural goal scorer. He's a funny dude. Like he's chilled and laid back and doesn't let things get to him. And I'm glad I'm here for it that he got to the Iron Man streak and will likely get to 1,000 games, knock on wood, for the young well, aging veteran, but yeah, good on him. All right, let's take a look at the scores so far in the first period. Bring that back up. Okay, so early on, Red Wings and Bruins are scoreless, 13:08 left in the first. The Panthers and the Flyers, the Panthers are up 1-0 on a Gustav Forsling goal, his second of the year at 3:41. 13:45 left in the uh, first period. The Senators are already up on the Wild 1-0. Alex DeBrincat getting a goal at 3:47, and my Sabres and the um, Montreal Canadiens are scoreless. Montreal has failed to convert on 2 power plays. The Sabres are currently just about 13 minutes into the power play, but having problems getting out of their own zone. So, um, yeah. So let's talk about the news of the week. The NHL announced this is their first set of 3 stars of the week for the NHL. And 3 stars of the week, they agree with me. Rasmus Dahlin, he was the first star of the week based off of his nice power move by Thompson. Oh, it almost went in. All right. So he, had a great week, set the record, NHL record for most games at the beginning of the season with a goal. So Rasmus Dahlin's one. Uh, Kachuk, Brady Kachuk has got the second star. He had 3 goals, 4 assists in 7 games. It's 7 points in 3 games for second star. They gave it to Darlene, even though he had fewer points, 3 goals, 2 assists, and 5 points in 3 games, because Darlene's a defenseman and he did something no one's ever done before. And then third star is Mackenzie Blackwood, goaltender for the Devils. He had a 3-0 record in the week, 1.33 goals against average. So uh, great weeks for all 3 players, and we'll be bringing you next week's 3 stars when that comes about. Um, yeah, so let's go on to news. So this week, in fact, tomorrow, no, not tomorrow night, Saturday night, the Arizona Coyotes will have their home opener. Now, they've been on a 6-game road trip all throughout the country, and coming home to the aptly named hockey arena called Mullet Arena. Perfect name. Gotta love it. Which is on the campus of Arizona State. It's where the Arizona State Sun Devils play. So this is great. It's going to be a great atmosphere. It's a 5,000 seat arena, um, and so I'm already some linkages with the Coyotes so far, in that uh, Shane Doan's son, who plays for the for Arizona State University, and is a draftee of the Arizona Coyotes, although hasn't signed a contract yet. Scored the first goal in that arena's history, so good on the kid. Uh, maybe that second generation of Doans to really keep the team around there in Arizona. Um, but yeah, there. So let's talk about the road that uh, Arizona's had to play. So they played their first 6 games of the season on the road. They're 2-4, slow start, but they had some decent wins. They had a good win against Toronto, and then they had a pretty resounding win against Columbus, 6-3 win. They can score goals at times, so and we illustrated that with Shane Goss's Bear being my player of the week in the Central Division. They've got some scoring, so um, it should be a good atmosphere if they do it right. I'm still waiting to see how the arena breaks down. They're doing 4 games this week, or the over the next week, at the new arena there in Tempe. They're playing the Jets the first game. They play the Rangers the second game. Um, Who else do they have? The Panthers and the Stars. So it's a pretty formidable lineup coming into, into Tempe to play games. It'll be interesting with that Rangers game, because um, there are a lot of displaced New Yorkers in the area. So a lot of those games in the desert turn out to be home games for the road teams just because they've got so many displaced folks there. Minnesota's tied up the game um, against the Senators. The looks like Matt Zuccarello got a power play goal at 7:53, and we've had 2 goals in the Flyers Panthers game. Josh Mahura got his second goal at 7:58 for the Florida Panthers, and Tony D'Angelo pulled. Actually, he scored before Mahura at 6:41. So Florida back on top, 2-1. Um, but yeah, so following these 4 games in Tempe, then Arizona goes back out on the road, and they are back out on the road for over a month. They leave the 5th, and they aren't back until December 9th for a home game. And during this period, I think they're building some additions to the visitor side locker rooms to get it up to NHL standards. So, um, if they weren't able to do this, they would have been, like 2 months of the season that Arizona have been on the road. So they get the 4 weeks or the 4 games to get home, get rested, get ready to go back on the road because they're going to do another 14 games on the road between November 5th and December 9th. And so that means 20 of the first 24 games for the Arizona Coyotes are on the road. And we'll see how that goes for them. Again, we're not expecting much out of the Arizona Coyotes this season, but I'm really interested to see what happens with this arena and how the fans are engaged in it. Let's see. Tickets for the February 18th game between Tampa and Carolina, North Carolina State University's Carter Finley Stadium, the outdoor game, the the Winter Classic game. Or that's not the Winter Classic. That's the Bridgestone outdoor game or whatever they call it. But Carolina hosting Tampa at Carter Finley Stadium, which actually shares a parking lot with their main arena, PNC. So they're not moving far, but it's going to be great to see that many fans at the game. North Carolina, the Carolina Hurricane fans know how to tailgate. So just think that instead of having 20,000 fans at a game, under 20,000, they're going to have like 80,000 at the game. That much more tailgate action. It's going to be fun. If you can get down to Raleigh for that, I would definitely do it. Let's see. Injury news. Lineup news. We'll talk about Eric Stahl. He's making his debut tonight for the Carolina Hurricanes. Uh, I'm sorry, not Carolina Hurricanes. The Florida Panthers. He was able to uh, come onto the roster due to the injury to Aaron Ekblad. They freed up some salary space, and were able to get him onto the roster. Good on him. I mean, he's kind of floated around a few teams the last few years. He had a long career with the Carolina Hurricanes. Went to Minnesota, was there for a while. But he's floated around a little bit with Montreal, Buffalo, and now has found himself in Carolina. So we'll see or in Florida, and we'll see how he does and how long he lasts. Because once Aaron Ekblad comes, then the Panthers are going to have some questions to answer as to how do you get Aaron Ekblad back on the ice? Who do you send down? Who do you release? Do they, is this a tryout for Eric Stahl for them to eventually move him along? Who knows? Let's see. David Juracek, Columbus's top draft pick, was injured in preseason. He's making his season debut with the Blue Jackets, so it'll be interesting to see how he plays as a young defenseman. Looked good in preseason, and we'll see how he fits into the grand scheme of things. Is that tonight or is that tomorrow? They're playing the Bruins tomorrow, so he'll get his debut against the Bruins. Very good. Um, And unfortunately, Brand Marchand is making his season debut. In fact, there is a goal. Charlie Coyle got a goal in the first period Detroit is losing to Boston 1-0. But Brad Marchand is back on the ice, unfortunately for the Bruins. I hate that guy. But anyway, he's back. Had off-season hip surgery, which caused him to miss the first 8 games of the season for the Bruins. Let's see. Oh, some good news. First in North American pro hockey that happened in Kalamazoo, Michigan. The Kalamazoo Wings faced off against the Cincinnati Cyclones. And what was interesting about the matchup wasn't what happened on the ice, was what was behind the bench. It's the first matchup between two black coaches in North American hockey history. There haven't been a whole lot of black coaches in North American hockey history. So to have the coaches Jason Payne and Joel Martin face off. Great step forward. Great to have more representation in the coaching ranks. And from what I hear with Jason Payne in Cincinnati is that this guy's up and comer. So I'm interested to see what happens with him. He's in the Buffalo system, but that doesn't mean anything. He can get plucked by another team to coach at a higher level. So but yeah, good on him and good on Joel Martin for uh, making history. Injury news: it's feared that Ottawa Senators center. It's hard to say 3 times fast. Ottawa Senators center Jake Sanderson may be out for the rest of the season with a shoulder injury. He missed 12 games last year with a shoulder injury, and it's the same shoulder, but apparently it's a different injury. They're waiting on more tests to see if surgery is going to be necessary. And if it is, he will be done for the remainder of the season. Um, eh, More bad news for the Vancouver Canucks. It wasn't already bad enough already with the 2-5 0-2-5 and 2 start. Uh, Quinn Hughes, they're really the most decent thing on their back end, is now out for a few weeks. Oh, and Montreal just scored. Yeah. Come on, boys! You had a good start to the season. Don't blow it on Montreal. Um, But, yeah, Quinn Hughes, really the only decent thing on the back end for the Montreal Canadiens. Looks like he is going to be out for a while. It started out as a day-to-day injury, it was a late scratch against Buffalo, and then, uh oh, that was awful. It was a bank in off of Owen Power. Anyway, yeah, he started out day to day, then it was week to week when he was scratched against Buffalo, and now he's gone on injured reserve, which means he's probably out for a couple weeks. At the very least. Matthias Samuelson of the Buffalo Sabres got off to a really good start. He still has not scored his first NHL goal, um, but very good physical presence on the back end for the Buffalo Sabres. The early part of the season went down awkwardly against the Vancouver Canucks early in that game and had to leave the ice and didn't return. Uh, a lot of people feared that it was a season ender with the knee, but it turns out not as serious with the knee. He's going to be gone a few weeks, but should return to action. Uh, Other injury on the Buffalo blue line: Henry Okiharu took a puck in the face in the game prior against Calgary. He is listed as week to week. Although they say that there's progress on him, he might return sooner rather than later. Um, and let's see, the last story we got of the night. We've got it's never too early to start thinking about the New York, the NHL entry draft. It's moving back to June as it has always been in the NHL, and so the NHL entry draft will drop. I think it's in Nashville this year, and Connor Bedard was listed as the first top pick from Central Scouting. He's got received an A grade, which means he's a first round bona fide first round pick. And right now he's tearing up the Western Hockey League, the Regina. I think he's Regina Pats. Um, oh, no, crease violation looks like. Um, but yeah, he's tearing up the Western Hockey League. He's got 21 points in 12 games. Um, But he can't rest because we saw what happened with Shane Wright last year. He was the consensus number 1 pick heading into the draft, and he didn't get picked till 4th. And he's had all kinds of struggles in Seattle trying to stick around. We're still not sure whether he's going to stick around full time or he's going to get released back to the Canadian Hockey League. Uh, but yeah, so Connor Bedard looks like he's going to be the top pick in the NHL entry draft in June in Nashville, and we'll see who gets to pick him. Uh, this year we have new rules for the NHL entry draft, and so teams that have won that entry draft in the last few years aren't eligible for winning it again. Um, you can only pick first like once every 5 years or something like that. Some strange rules, but it's kind of done to prevent tanking. Um, and it's done to prevent teams from winning the draft lottery over and over again. Like Buffalo's won it twice. Technically, they had the worst record to get the Owen Power pick, um, and they had the worst record to get the Rasmus Dahlin pick, but they still won the draft lottery enough to keep that first overall pick. So, um, or Edmonton. Edmonton has won several times, including Connor McDavid. So, um, we'll see what happens with the NHL entry draft. I'll be interested to see how the lottery shakes out. Okay, let's take a look at the scores before we wrap up tonight. So the Bruins are still leading the Red Wings 1-0, 4:27 left in the first. That Charlie Coyle goal is standing up, his second of the season. Gustav Forsling and Jason Mahura for the Florida Panthers have scored, while Tony DeAngelo has replied for the Philadelphia Flyers 2-1. 5:58 left in the first period for the for the Florida Panthers lead. Tied in Ottawa between the Wild and the Senators. Matt Zuccarello responded to a Alex DeBrincat goal early in the game. Zuccarello is already up to 5 goals this season, so he has not slowed down on the scoring. And then 1-0 Canadians. Brendan Gallagher got that bank shot that came off of, I believe it's the Anderson in goal, and hit Owen Power out front and bounced into the net. So 1-0 Buffalo, or 1-0 Canadians, with 4:17 left in the first period. That is it for this week. I appreciate those of you watching. We had some folks on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch. We had some folks on TikTok. I really appreciate everyone watching. Give it a like, a share, a subscribe if you're on, especially on YouTube. The promise is if I get to 100 subscribers on YouTube, I will shave off the goatee. So I don't know how long it'll stay off, but it'll get shaved off. I'll be on a broadcast for that. Maybe one broadcast for the hockey show, one broadcast for the political deep dive later in the week. I also invite you to join me on the political deep dive Sunday nights at 10 p.m. Uh, on whatever channel you're watching from, whether it's TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook. We do the latest and greatest in news, politics, pop culture. This week we're talking about death, as we're on the cusp of El Dia de la Muerte, and Halloween. So, and we'll be dressed up. A lot of fun. So, anyway, thanks everyone for joining us tonight, and we will talk to you all next week.